Frieder, I know you have told this story 100 times before, but being such an early pioneer, you're very often asked about the early beginnings when it all came about. What happened in '65 or even before that you started to work with a computer at the time and then later tried out the first plotter from Zuse?
What happened in '65? '65 is 3 years before '68, and you know what happened in '68, but you want to hear something different. What happened in '65 was that independently 3 exhibitions were put up of computer art, as it was called then. One of those I was lucky enough to put my own stuff into. Why were those 3 people, Michael Knoll in New York, Georg Nees in Stuttgart, and myself, why were they doing this? I have no idea.
But you were part of it, so you know about yourself.
And I have a little idea, you know, as I guess in all similar cases, this was part of what had to happen. At the same time, around the same time, you have fluxes. You have happenings, you have conceptual art, you have video art, just a little after computer art, by the way. You have op art, you still have constructivism, concrete art, and they are, if you look at their results, kind of different. No? They are kind of different. However, there must be something they share. And it seems to me what they share is this started with Marcel Duchamp, going beyond the confines of traditional art. You know? Each one of these movements in some other way denied art as it was known and started to do something in this direction or that direction. This is the perspective from behind. I then in '65 was a young student and I was just proud, you know, that's all. You know? And lucky to have been in a situation at the University of Stuttgart in the computing center to have access to the appropriate machinery. That's all.
So you only pursued this activity as an artist for a limited time, right?
Yeah. I published a little note, it's not even an article, just a little note in 1970 and another one in 1971, the first one under the title, "There Should Be No Computer Art." That was a political statement. And in '71, one on technocratic Dadaists. So I called those who were still doing this off, though I had announced that I would be stopping exhibiting because this was a crime against all the progressive movements in the world. You cannot use the computer in order to propagate bourgeois ideology and so on. I then accused them of being technocratic Dadaists, i.e. doing fun for the bourgeoisie with technocratic means.
So you actually did stick to it for a very long time.
When you think of it, well, you know, what I did there, in some way you could say, well, that's an artist's statement.
That's how I see it.
Exactly. So I left the field of immediately doing art, and I actually did do this, with a French word is aplomb, no? Some accusation.
But you stayed with the whole field all along. You have written a lot about digital art, you have lectured a lot about digital art, you actually taught the more commercial aspect or working with the computer, not in an artistic field. And now, since 5 years, you are teaching digital art again.
Yeah. You know what is interesting? This story that you briefly indicate is really, in my case, tied up with the political movement in the West, in West Germany, more or less. Namely, when I stopped, I started to do politics for about 12 years. Radical, new left, Maoist politics, dangerous. When this movement in the mid-'80s broke down and disappeared, you know, with the small, tiny little splinter groups, as they said, I started to write again. I think there's a first article in a communist cultural magazine on computer art that I wrote. Process or product, which is more important, was the question. And from then on, this is what? That's 25 years now. I have more and more increasingly and with great enjoyment not only written and not only gave lectures and actual courses to students, but also started to contribute again a little. Yes, I see this development, at least looking back, as one. No? We can, when we talk about it this way, then we separate phases and concentrations and so on. That's okay, but it's more or less one person having done this.
Of course.
No?
So, what tempted you to really start getting more involved with the art aspect again?
Yeah, the one anecdote is that this magazine I mentioned, somehow its editor had gotten to know that I had been doing something like this. So he asked me, would you write about this? I said, you know what, this is a communist journal. Can we do something? Why not? No? So that's one, an interest there. And the other step then, beautiful, really beautiful, and made me feel honored when in 2004, Kunsthalle Bremen put up a show, a retrospective, really. And from there on, I have been participating. You know what? There is something on the internet, I always forget the title of this thing. Somebody's doing something, all the artists in the world. I'm place 3000.
I know this, what you're talking about.
Great.
Place 3000.
3000.
Yeah, he ranks it because of the amount of exhibitions you have internationally.
Yeah.
And you're always appearing again. I mean, all this pioneer exhibition, FriederNake.
My curve is going up.
So you see.
What I thought I will do is, I tell them, I'm represented in Museum XYZ, this will also give me high ranking, no? It's so stupid, no? Because there's names behind me. Oh, heaven's sake, how is that possible? I tell my students so they know this is really important that I work with that fellow, 3,000 in the world. Yeah, but more seriously, digital art, as I now prefer to say, instead of computer art, but it doesn't really matter anymore. Digital art has arrived in art history. This has happened 10 years ago, not precise, that's not important, but the last decade has proved that art historians here and there and everywhere have accepted this particular little tiny, not important branch on the tree of art as belonging to that tree. No? They are no longer interested in cutting it off. And that is interesting because I do believe I understand this field. I tell you, I have convinced myself more and more that what now is called digital media, and an important part in the current transformation of society, that this started in the early 1960s, when computer graphics, before you had computer science as an established science, computer graphics and computer art started to do something. And that's when the computer gradually took on the quality of a medium. So digital media, which is really changing society, I believe, starts with things you show, really, nowadays. No? And that's why I'm interested in that. No? And that's also why I don't see, I did something here and then I stopped, disappeared, did something there. It's always the same.
Of course.
No? I'm just lucky through accidents that I was at some place at a time when this thought was needed to be thought. No? I'm not particularly something, my brain just moved when that thought was in the air. You know?
And you picked it up. Thank you very much, Frieder.